The Drum Candy podcast is brought to you by Drum Factory Direct.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into episode 43 of the Drum Candy Podcast. This is your host, Mike Dawson, coming to you from Drum Factory Direct in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This week, I am sitting down. Actually, it's our first in-person episode. I'm over at Hawthorne Drum Shop in McKees Rock, Pennsylvania, which is just a couple miles north of downtown Pittsburgh. I'm sitting with the owner of the company, Chris Hawthorne, and we are going to just pick through some of his coolest stuff he has in the shop and get some background on how he got into this crazy business, some of his favorite things, some myth busting about buying and selling vintage drums. So this is definitely check out the video version if you're only listening to this on audio. But this is a true gearhead nerd fest. So let's get right to it with Chris Hawthorne of Hawthorne Drum Shop.
How do you decide what to sell and what to keep?
Oh, man. So here's what I've learned over the years is, I started off a lot like other people, you're a drummer, and then you find something on Craigslist or whatever, and you're like, oh, this is cool. I'll play this. I'll gig this old kit. And then you find something else and you trade that. And I was always like chasing like the kit. You know what I mean? Like you'll talk to somebody and be like, oh, man, this is going to my grave. I'm like,
right.
No, it's not.
I got one or two.
Do you?
Yeah,
Good for you. See, like, I haven't found that yet. So for me, it's like, I don't know. If something is just sitting on a shelf, which, frankly, if I kept a lot of stuff, it would just sit on the shelf. That's kind of how I don't keep it. So if I'm not going to play it, if it's not going to see use, then I send it along.
What have you kept?
Not a whole lot. I got a few Keplinger snares. He makes like the best drums. They're just my favorite. So I've got 3 or 4 of those. I have a couple of snare drums that were like kind of like sentimental value. I have a Camco kit I just love Camco.
Is that the one back there?
Yeah.
Can you go snag the rack, Tom?
Yeah, I'll go get it.
What's the story behind this Camco? Where'd it come from?
So this one came from California. I found it on an auction site, and I have a friend who lives out in California. And I'm like, bro, and sometimes he'll pick up stuff for me. And I was like, listen, I'll give you, this is how much I'll pay you for the kit. If it sells for, less than that, obviously keep the money. And I don't want to say how much it sold for because it was stupid. But he made a lot of money.
Okay.
Which is great. So I went to pick up the kit. It turned out to be a 3-hour drive. And I told him, because he had to ship it back to me. And I'm like, just all the extra stains and the hardware, like, just scrap it. He's like, all right. So he sends me the kit. It's got the snare, too. Show the snare. Right here. It's 4.5 by 14. All, like, pretty much, not all original, but, like.
What is this? Is that a muffler on the bottom?
Yeah. So, it goes up. It's got, like, this little wormy thing there.
Oh, wow.
They're really stupid.
That is really strange.
Yeah. They rattle a lot, and sometimes like the wire, that part doesn't work. Anyway, so I get it, and it's like, man, it's got everything. A couple of like unoriginal tension rods or whatever, but like throw off works, everything works. No tom arm.
Oh, you threw it away.
He threw it away. And like, listen, like I'm not mad at him. Like, he's like, oh no. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, and they're hard to find, man. Like, they're not easy. He's like, what's a new one cost? Like $50? I'm like, nope. Like 200. He's like, all right. He's like, well, if you find one. So I found one, and it was like a ton of money, but he bought it for me because he's a nice dude.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Throw away everything but the tom arms. There's your lesson.
I should have
listening.
specified that.
Throw away cymbal stands, throws,
he doesn't
baskets.
Know. Right.
Don't throw away legs. Don't throw away tom arms.
Man, my old shop, I was in a warehouse about a mile down the road, and it was in a dump station. So there's like the literal dump station where like contractors would go throw away stuff, people cleaning our houses, and then there's a rehearsal building for like bands, and there's a big warehouse in the back. And sometimes they would bring me stuff that people would like throw away. Nothing great, like a couple cymbals, but I'm like, it just makes me wonder, like what are in the landfills?
Well, I rescued a 70s 6.5x14 Superphonic from the trash. I rescued a 6.5 WFL, whatever the mahogany drum was, the Pioneer, whatever they called it. What else did I rescue from the trash? What I lost in the trash was my high school had a Ludwig kit with garnet and gold two-tone sparkle. It was so beautiful.
Kit?
A whole kit. 12, 13, 16, 24.
Oh my God.
They threw it away and replaced it with a Tama Swing Star. I tried to track that kit down for years.
24? Oh my
It was the
Lord.
best sounding bass drum I've ever heard in my life. Had the original silver dot heads on it.
Dude, there's probably so much. I don't want to think about it. There's a story I heard from this one fella who he buys school instruments, so like woodwinds and do they use woodwinds in band, brass instruments. I got some cymbals off of him. We were talking. He's like, I make a long story short. He bid on this big auction, and he lost. And then like a month later, the school calls him and it's like, hey, do you want all this stuff? He's like, yeah. He's like, well, you got to get down here today because we're gonna bulldoze the school.
Oh, geez.
So he got like as many trucks as he could, and like he's walking like there's no power, so he's walking through with like flashlights, like.
Oh, God.
And he didn't even get to the percussion.
So you just got like tubas and stuff?
Everything he could fit, and you know it's just sad, man. Sad.
Oh, man. Wait, we didn't finish talking about the Camco kit. So why do you like Camco?
I don't know, man. Like my first Camco kit, I remember they're hard to find. I mean, they didn't make a whole lot of them compared to anything else. And I heard a lot of hype about them. And I got my first one, like, oh, okay, I get it. And they just have like a sound. I think there's a video of Matt Chamberlain talking about like a Gretsch broadcaster on YouTube that I've seen. And he's like, well, I like these because they sound like drums should sound. And that's the kind of way I think about Camco is like, they're nice and warm. They resonate like just enough. And they're also really easy to tune. So like the shells are slightly, you can't see it, but they're slightly undersized. So heads fit on like super easy. They spin easy. It's not like you're dealing like with a 60s Gretsch where you have to like jam them on.
I don't want to talk about Gretsch because I don't like them.
That's okay. That's okay.
That's the first thing everyone asks me because I have so many drums. Do you have any Gretsch? Nope. I had one snare and I sold it.
Why don't you like Gretsch?
I don't like that they're hard to tune and they're way too expensive.
Best there ever. Have you played square badge Gretsch?
Yes.
That's the best.
That's what I had my eye on for a while, but then the price just went way up. I saw one for $900 for like a 4-piece kit.
Cheap.
I should have bought it.
Should have.
Now they're no way you'll touch that price.
I know.
So now, all right, go back to what were you looking for? Because the first question was, how do you decide what to sell and what to keep? So what were you looking for? Because everything but this you're talking about selling, right?
Yeah. What was I originally like? What do I look for if
that-
I'm going to keep something?
Yeah, the kit that you'll get buried with.
I can tell you the snare drum.
Okay.
80s Tama Bell Brass.
Ooh, all right. They're not impossible.
They're also like thousands of dollars. That's one. I try to think too, like long term, like what's going to go up in value. Like I think that like I have a lot. My shop is a lot of memorabilia. So like, what's a cool thing to like display? Like I have some stuff like. Let me grab this real quick.
All right. Oh, look at that.
Yes, this is a Shriner's drum.
Shriners, the dudes who ride around in little motorcycles.
Yeah. I think this is a 22x6. You can see here, it's got like the head on it.
Yeah, that's
On their
super
site,
cool.
too. Yeah. So I got this at the Delaware Drum Show, and they have it at the Nurse Shriner. My buddy Joe Meckler, he puts on the show every year. And he's like, yeah, he comes up to us like at the show and he's like, hey, like I pulled these drums out of the basement. Like, do you want to buy it? I'm like, yeah, I'll buy it. So I bought it. And it's just like, I don't know, it has like sentimental value because I think it was the first Delaware show I did. And I love that show. And it's a cool display piece. It's so, like, I won't sell this. You know, like it's just, It's also really dusty. And I have another one in the back. It's 24. It's a shrine drum. That's just cool. So
Yeah.
it's got meaning. It's like, that's kind of what I think about too, is like, what are things that have meaning? What are things that have use? What are things that, like, if I hold on to, that maybe, stuff will go up in value over the years? So that's kind of what I think about.
So would you ever sell the Camcos?
No. I say that now, but like if somebody made like a trade offer that was like something else I wanted more, I don't know what else I want more though. I don't know. It just sounds so good.
That's saying something. A room full of everything.
Uh-huh.
It's the Camco that you would pick to be your kit.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got Q in here. You've got everything in here. Ludwig, Slingerland, Rogers, Tama.
We've got a lot of stuff.
Some crazy
Vibes,
stuff.
Yamaha.
Vibes. CNC.
Premiere.
You've got them all. All right. Is there anything you wish you would have kept that you've sold?
Yes. So I always think about this kit. There was another Camco kit. It was a green sparkle Chanute era. So that was after they went to Oaklawn.
Okay.
It wasn't a special kit. It was rewrapped in green. It had Yamaha hardware. It was a 2012 14. It just sounded so good. Mm-hmm. And that, like, those aren't my sizes, but it was cool because I could gig with it. Like, it had the Yamaha spurs, which are great. It had I didn't have to like go out and like, I hope my bass drum doesn't slide across the stage. And I didn't have to worry about like dropping something on it and ruining the finish. And it sounded awesome. I think about that one a lot. I had a thermoglass kit maybe 4 or 5 years ago that I think about a lot.
What is that? What's thermoglass?
So it's a finish. Ludwig did it in the 70s. Bonham played that kit. George Flutis, who's like a big Bonham guy, bought it from Chicago. But it was a guy who lived about an hour south of Pittsburgh. And it was a special order. It was a 26 by 14. And Bonham used a Rogers mount.
Okay.
But instead of a Rogers mount, it had a Ludwig standard diamond plate on it. And then like an arm that went out. I've never seen that before. And it was really clean. And I like big size drums too. And I would just be like, I don't know. I probably would have sold it, but I don't know. It was just a really cool kit. And it came with another matching bass drum that was Virgin. And it looked like it wasn't played.
Interesting. So someone bought a double bass Bonham kit.
So the story was this older fella, he was probably in his 80s. He bought it off of the original owner. I guess the guy's mom bought it for him. He played it a couple months and then put it in cases. And the guy did the same thing. He didn't play it very long and he kept it in cases. The Superphonic, when I pulled it out, it was a 70s Superphonic. And I touched it and it took fingerprints, which I've never seen before.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Well, at least it went to someone who's like the Bonham freak, right?
Right. So he didn't buy the matching 26 bass, and he asked me all the time, "Hey man, like if you ever come," I'm like, I don't even remember who I sold it to. So, but you can see him playing it in some of his videos. It's a really cool kit.
All right, you said something a minute ago about that because you play mostly heavy music, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like. I don't want to talk about my early music influences because it's just very embarrassing.
But my point is, taking vintage drums out for a gig where you know you're going to be smashing is probably not the smartest decision.
I mean, when I was like doing stuff on the road, but I didn't tour a lot. You know, like mostly like weekenders and stuff. I did some with vintage gear, but mostly I had a couple Q kits that I gigged with that sounded awesome. I mean, I was playing a lot of rooms that no mics. So basically what you're hearing from the drums is, something that was louder and powerful. But I have gigged some vintage stuff. The last gig I played with the Camco. Oh man. I remember that there's this coffee shop in Mount Washington called Black Forge. And they used to do shows a lot. And my band would play there all the time for whatever reason. I remember, and their stage is not a big stage. Like, it's not enough for a band. In one gig, I had a 26, 14, 16, 18, 5s. It was the brushed brass finish. I don't know what I was doing, man.
That must have been so loud in there.
But you know what? It's not even that. Like, man, I'm so tired of like carrying big stuff.
Was that fiberglass shells?
Yeah.
Those are
It's
heavy.
dude. But after that, I'm like, all right, I'm done with this. And I went the other way. And I played like the next gig, I think it was a bop kit. It was like a Blameyer 18-inch kick and then like a 12 and 14-inch Ludwig.
All right. So you don't play 22s very often?
Well, I do now because like they're great. You know, they do it. They're not heavy. It's not excessive. You know, I don't know. I have a lot of. I love drummers who have their own thing, which is like there's been so many drummers, so it's hard to like, what's your own thing now? But something that makes sense. That's like cool. Like there's a guy named Nick. He plays in a band called Sumac, and he lives in Vancouver, I think. And he plays Vistalites, which is not unique, but he has like, it's always like a 15 by 14 inch rack tom on top of the bass. And it's like mega angled. And it makes sense because he's a tall dude. I'm like, that's just the coolest thing ever. You know, some guys will play like mega tilted cymbals and yeah, I like people who have their own thing.
Yeah, I dig it. Next question. Oh, you already said your favorite snare. Do you have one of the Keplingers here?
Oh yeah. I'm going to show you one. I don't even know if this is a Keplinger, to be honest. I think it is.
Is that a Pearl free-floating system?
CB700.
CB700, which was that a Pearl imprint? That was like the entry-level $200 kit, right?
They also made some really good snares, believe it or not.
Never seen them.
Yeah. Not a lot. I mean, very, very few. But I had a Keplinger 8x14 free-floating brass a while ago. And when he made them, he would use these free-floating shells, which look like Pearl. I think that actually Pearl might have, I don't know the history of that anyway. So I found this on eBay out of Seattle. I bought it, and it's a heavy shell. It's definitely brass. It's got a seam here, but there's no markings on here. And usually what Greg would say, you know, who would sign it, not fragile, put a date on there. Yeah,
right. Yeah, I wonder when he started doing that. From the
probably, I want to say the early 90s, maybe. And I emailed him and said, hey, like, is this your drum? And after some back and forth, he wasn't sure. But I feel like it has to be because it came from Seattle.
I mean, yeah, who would be ripping off his thing?
Dude, this drum sounds insane.
So that's pretty close to a bell brass, really? Sonically.
Yeah. I've played a bell brass. I don't know, like, he cuts these out of pipes, which is just the silliest thing ever. Like, it's so cool that a dude was like, all right, I want to make, and like, it's just all so primitive, but it worked.
Yeah.
He like, you know, cut it down, put edges on it, you know, whatever, like, and then it works. So.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah, that's my favorite. I think it's my favorite, even though it actually might not be Keplinger. I obviously did a really nice restoration job. You see all the rust on the tension rods and all that.
Well, that's a question for you. How far do you go when something comes in and it's kind of dirty? Do you kind of leave it? I mean, what is that you have to fix versus what adds the vibe, you know?
I'm going to be brutally honest. It's just how lazy I feel.
Okay, fair enough.
So sometimes, like, if we get in a kit that's like pretty dirty, and we'll completely take off the hardware, we'll soak it, polish the shells, all that stuff. Some of the kits that come in are like close. So we'll do like, Giuseppe calls them, Giuseppe's the guy that works with me, he'll call them like a showroom finish. And we just kind of like spray it down, wipe it down, make it look sparkly. So it really depends on the kit. Some of the stuff's pretty gnarly, and we'll have to like take it apart and put it all together. And then when you get it together, you're like going to do a demo and then all the springs rattle.
Oh, of course.
That's my favorite thing. Yeah, that's my favorite thing about the restoration.
Do you then go back and stuff them, or you just leave it?
No. If we can figure out what lug it is, but if it's like all of them, like, I'm not doing that. Because, you know, honestly, like, a lot of people they'll buy kits from us, and they'll get it home, and then I'll see like a tag on Instagram, like, oh, like, giving, you know, the old lady or whatever they're calling the kit, you know, giving her a nice scrub down, and they'll like take everything apart and clean it again.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So it really depends, you know, just one of those.
So
things.
that's just like how little do you need to do to make it look sellable, right?
You know what? And some stuff I leave though that like looks old and cool. Like I kind of stopped cleaning nickel because you can't make nickel dirty quick. You can make it clean. It's kind of the same thing with cymbals. I don't clean cymbals. So it kind of depends. The in thing now is like old drums that aren't old.
Yeah.
That like are purposely patinaed and sometimes rusted.
Relict or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not into that.
Yeah, I feel like you got to earn that.
I like real relic.
Yeah. I
You
want
know?
some old shit to be old shit.
Exactly. Dude, when I was a kid, man, like, and I started to skateboard, I always thought it was so cool. Like, you'd see like your favorite skaters and the bottom of their boards all torn up. Like,
yeah.
But, like, I couldn't do a tail slide yet. It's like I'll go up to curb and I would like, look at me. That's kind of how I feel about like relic guitars.
I mean, I came from
drums.
the era when you had freaking rails on your board, so that was the thing.
Oh.
How far down can you wear your rails?
That's sick though. So you're an OG then.
Yep. And I don't remember what they were called, the grind guards that would be on your trucks. We'd get those too.
Grind guards. And then somebody realized that this is like excessive. You can just grind on the actual trucks, Yeah.
All right. So, current favorite cymbal.
Current favorite cymbal. I'm going to go get it.
All right, then.
So I grabbed 2 here, Mike.
AGOPS.
So this is
That's not an AGOP.
no. This is a very rare cymbal. I really like this one. It's got a lot of
Oh,
wash. Really, really nice body to it. Just
What is that?
dude. I think this is an old just Japanese cymbal, but they don't sound good. But they don't sound like this. Like, I don't know what's going on with this, but it literally.
It's like it's been spray painted.
Some guy brought it in with some Zildjians. He's like, "Do you want this?" I'm like, "Not really." He's like, "We can have it." And I hit it.
Is it bronze or is it brass? Do you even know?
It's brass. And sometimes, like, I've in all seriousness, like, we'll get like old Japanese cymbals and they're thinner, and people will have hammered them, and they sound kind of cool. Mm-hmm. Like, I'd buy it for like $30, but this is. No, that's not the one.
That's freaking weird.
This is, I think, my favorite cymbal I have in the shop. It's oops. It's an AGOP 24 Sig.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This is just. It's probably way too loud for the podcast, but it's a 24. I love 24s. It sounds great. It's not too dry.
So you've seen a lot of old K, or you've seen a fair number of old Ks come through over the years, I assume.
Some, not a lot. They're really hard. I've never had a 20. I've never had a 22.
Really?
No, that's like the thing is like if I find one in the wild, I probably would keep it.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of 18s and hats and stuff, but they're just. I feel like all the 22Ks are just like circle.
Yeah, and they just keep going up and up and up.
Yeah, just kind of go around, but.
All right, so I was wondering how close that is to an old K, because I think if people don't know, the AGOP factory is where the Ks were originally made back in the day. So I'm wondering how close they are to.
I think in my minimal experience, they're probably pretty close. I've also had some old Ks that just don't sound good.
Yeah, the few I've played were not great.
But and it's one of those buzzwords with cymbals, like smoky. But they literally that's the 30th. I think 30th AGOP are pretty close. Some of the Caropes I've had kind of have that same.
They have the vibe.
Yeah, have that same vibe. But
I wanted to go back. When you're getting a drum ready to sell, do you replace tension rods or do you leave the rusty, janky things in there?
we usually clean them.
Clean.
It depends. I mean, if there's like no like chrome on it, like you just toss it. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing too that I think is interesting is, some of the guys who've been doing this way longer than I have are more into the like period correct, the collector stuff. And it didn't really like make sense to me. It's like if you get a kit. So I bought a kit the other day. It's just the shells, and it's a rare kit. And so when I like get it to like as close as I can, but like it's not like all original. If I put original parts on, it's period correct. So does that make it worth any more money? Like if you just get all the parts and put it like wasn't born with a kit. I think that's way cooler is like getting, a kit in that's like, I'm trying to think if I have anything. I got a Superphonic the other day. It's got all original heads, all original tension rods. That's cool because it was more than likely just kept that way. So long story short is, we try to reuse as much stuff as we can, within reason, like tension rods and claws and all that stuff. But we do replace them if we need to.
Now, what adds to the value and what might take away from the value
of a kit?
Or a drum that you have to do something
Holes,
to.
extra holes, modifications. I think if something's born together, like if we get a super classic and they're all like came from the factory together, that increases the value. Fading and wrap. So if you get like a White Marine Pearl kit from the 70s, like those just faded a lot. And if there's like variation in the wrap, they'll take away the value.
Interesting.
Out of round edges, I think like there's some dings in the edges, which I get why it does it. But like, man, if there's 2 like dings in an edge, it's not going to make a drum sound any worse. Some of my friends and I who do this will joke, like we'll get kits with like the worst, quote unquote, worst edges, and they sound amazing. So I don't know if that's like me expecting them to sound bad and they don't, or
Yeah,
but
would they sound better if you recut the edges?
they sound different, I'm sure.
Right.
But I don't know, like if somebody didn't have bottom heads on and accidentally like smacked the edge off of the bass drum, is it gonna like? No, it's not gonna make a big difference. I used to fill it with filler, and then people would get the drum like the filler popped right out. I'm like, of course it did. So I just stopped doing that. You know what I mean?
All right, that segues perfectly into some of the myths. I think it's one of the problems with the drum forum world is everyone is an expert, and it's like, what is really important? So what are edges, and what is the stuff that really contributes to the drum's sound and value versus stuff that maybe a novice buyer gets too obsessed over?
Oh, the drum forum world. Oh, Lordy.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is, and it's social media, like anything else. And I try to like not, back in like when I was like a little younger, I was like, that's not brass. Or shut up. It's always the guys who are like, I've been doing this for 60 years. And I'm like, dude, what have you been doing? But like, yeah, some of like the myths is like, what is something actually worth? I just saw like a citrus mod kit on Facebook this guy has. And he wanted a lot for it, but it was a downbeat. Like, you don't ever see those kits. And it had issues, and the guy was asking a lot of money, but everybody's like, $400. So I think people really undervalue what drums are worth now. Does that mean that they should be worth that? I don't know if people are buying them. Yeah, the guy who teaches here, Bert, we were talking about value the other day. And I'm like, yeah, it's like crazy how much prices are going up. And he's like, well, think about it. Like, is a 2213 Ludwig 3-ply kit worth as much as a Legacy kit? I'm like, no, it's not. And it really like made me wonder is like that they're not that expensive compared to new drums.
No.
Like, I think when a Rogers came out with I guess it would be they call it the Pink Ripple. I should know this.
Oh, the Red Ripple?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a professional.
The Covington?
Yeah. They were more expensive than like getting an original one.
I know. I saw that.
And I had one at the time. So I think, what something is worth is sometimes a myth in and of itself. And it goes the other way too. You'll see stuff that's like that might sell in 5 years to somebody who's just bored and just needs a kit right now. But, what stuff is worth is really subjective too. Some people come in and like, what's this kit worth? And I'm like, well, do you want to sell it in Pittsburgh? Probably way less. If you're willing to ship it somewhere, you'll get more for it. But the value thing is always kind of like a myth, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. How long are you willing to wait? All that stuff. Edges is another one. I was thinking about this yesterday because I knew that you're going to ask this question is how important are edges? And listen, I've never recut an edge in my life. I'm not an expert on building drums, but what I know is that like I think people will put too much stock in edges. Some of the Japanese kits that we have, the edges are flaking off. There's cracks. They sound great.
Yeah, you had one in here the other day.
Dude, we have this Tiger's Eye kit in the back, and it's literally firewood. And I haven't even looked at the edges, but like, it sounds awesome. It sounds really good. So I think we might put a little bit too much stock in edges. I think like if you're thinking about the profile, like people, I do this stupid thing where, you know, maybe it's not stupid, but like you ask me anything on Instagram and people will always go, this brand over that brand. And it was like, it was never Slingerland. I'm like, well, you hate Slingerland. No, I don't hate Slingerland. But a lot of their edges are just like flat and fat. And that matters. You know, I had a kit that I had come in and my guy like rewrapped it and he reprofiled the edges. This kit slammed. It sounds so good. So stuff like that matters. But like if there's dents and dings or like, you know, like a little ply separation, it's not a big deal. You know? So that's a myth. Myths. What are some other myths?
Are you having to like educate your customers often about that kind of stuff?
It's tough because I don't want to like, I feel like there's a tendency to talk down to people.
Yeah.
And if somebody asks me a question, and I get that a lot, is like, does the kit sound good? And like, so when I was doing this out of my house, which is how I started, a lot of the kits I couldn't even play. Cause like I live in my, like, I'm not trying to like bash on drums at 10 p.m. at night, wake up my neighbors. And
right.
I would just say I haven't played it. What was I totally forgot what the question even was. Oh, educating the customer. Yeah. So yeah, yes and no. And I don't want to like sell people on stuff. Like I used to have a sales job before I got into drums and it was, I hated it. So if somebody like wants some like I had a guy call in about a kit the other day and he hadn't had a vintage kit. That's different. Like, he'll ask him questions about the wrap and holes. That's different than like me trying to sell people. Now, if somebody like wants to argue with me on reverb about something, I'm not going to do that, you know? But I think that there is a little bit of education, people knowing that's important for people to know what they're buying. You know, what's the difference between a 6-ply kit or a 6-ply Ludwig and a 3-ply Ludwig, or do brass hoops matter on a snare drum, stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely.
What's your opinion on brass hoops?
They're great.
Me too.
They're great. Yeah. What was it? I'm trying to think. Oh, so like if you get like one of those, I'll bring it over actually. Hold on.
Oh, that's the one that I don't want to play because I'm going to fall in love with it.
This is a good one. All right, so we're talking about brass hoops. This is a pre-serial. Yeah, this is a pre-serial Superphonic. It was actually a super sensitive. So if you look at it,
the holes on top.
Yeah. They made a lot more of these. I don't know why, but you just see a lot of super sensitives that are chrome over brass. But this has chrome over brass hoops. I think these ones look like they're pretty much in round. A lot of them aren't. And that's one thing that's not a myth is like, if a hoop's like really out of round, man, it can like really be hard to tune. Same thing with a shell. Out of round shell makes heads fit tighter. You get less of a tuning range. But, oops, is something loose in here? Probably something fell off. But yeah, I mean, put these hoops on like a Superphonic or something else and it'll definitely make it way better. But they also bend a lot easier and they also like will chip, and a lot of times we'll get a Slingerland and there'll be like a pinch point where someone like maybe drop the drum or something because it's just such a softer metal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So let's talk about Black Beauties versus chrome over brass.
Okay.
Do you hear a difference?
They're different shells. So this is, and you definitely can't see this, so I'm gonna pretend like you can. This is a rolled one-piece shell. So what that means, it's just like, if you think about like, let's say that you're wrapping a present for your family for Christmas, you like lay out the wrapping paper, right? Same thing with the shell is like, they'll lay out the shell and then they'll bring it together This is a very crude way of explaining this. And then they weld the shell together. So it's not like there's a point here, and you can kind of see it where they welded the shell together.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. So it's not a spun shell. Black Beauty is a spun and drawn shell, that's the way they used to do it, at least. How they do it, I'm not like a builder, so I can't explain it, but it's a different way to make a drum. And they definitely do sound different. And you can 100% hear the difference between a 70s Black Beauty and a modern one. They're different. I think they're probably thicker too.
The older ones. That's
Yeah.
why those 70 ones are like so hard to find.
They're great, dude. One of my favorite drums. That was one of the ones I had to keep. And then I got bored of it because wasn't.
You sold it?
I've had a couple of them.
All right, man.
They're great, man. Like that's the one. Like you know what I want? I want a 70s engraved one.
I've never seen one.
Yeah, they're the floral ones, but I just don't want to spend $9 bajillion.
Yeah. So how do like the old 20s Black Beauties compare to the 70s or newer?
They're different. Let me go get another drum.
All right.
All right, I got 2 drums here. So we were talking about 20s Black Beauties. This is obviously not a Black Beauty.
All right. 20s. Okay. What is this?
So it's not a Black Beauty. Clearly it's not black, but this is a dance model. And it's a 20s 10 lug, which is, no, this is an 8 lug, sorry. They did make 8 lug Black Beauties, but the same shell. This is a 2-piece shell. Do you know how they made these shells?
I have no idea.
So this is called the bead here.
Yep.
And what they would do is, this is the one piece here, it's the second piece, and they'd weld it at the bead. So if you look at the inside, it's hard to see, but there's like a little seam on the inside of that bead where they put this. So it's not like a vertical. And these also have flanges on them, which you can see, but they would weld, some of them, they would weld the flange closed. And that's one of these things that's not a myth, is these drums sound way different than a 2-piece shell that don't have welded edges. I don't know what it is. It's just like creates like a column of sound. It's really, but these are some of my favorite shells.
Well, which ones would be welded and which ones wouldn't? Was it just random?
I have no idea.
So there's no way to tell by year or anything like that?
There might be. And like, that's another thing is like, I'm not like one of those guys. It's like, they would question, what year is the kit? I don't know. If there's not like, and that was a douchey thing to say, but if there's not a date stamp on it, I just don't like put a lot of stock in all the charts online, which is why I think it's cool when there's a date stamp. Now this is another 20s. This is obviously not a Black Beauty. I think that this was probably nickel originally, and then they just stripped it down to the brass, but this is another 2-piece shell.
So that's the same model as that, essentially, but bigger?
Yeah, it's just the 6x15. Or excuse me, 15 by 6.5. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 lug. So this was, the same shell, 2-piece, welded edges. I never even looked inside this drum.
So you prefer the welded edges?
This actually might. I don't know. The inside's kind of dark. It wasn't a Black Beauty because you'd be able to see the engraving. But yeah, dude, 2-piece shells are. That's another one that I had for a while. I bought a 6.5 by 14 10 lug with some mods in it. I don't care about mods. It was just a great drum. The thing that sucks about these is the throw-offs are absolute garbage. So they'll break. This one has a hole underneath it from the original throw-off, but I don't care about that stuff. This is I'll show you the original throw-off here. This one, you probably can't see this on the camera, but it has a Ludwig stamp, which I think is pretty cool. See that there?
Yeah.
And then this thing.
Slick.
Yeah.
So the 20s era nickel over brass is the same shell as the Black Beauties of the era. But when you get into the 70s, a brass superphonic is not a Black Beauty.
No.
Did not know that.
Now I have had a couple of superphonics that were Black Beauty shells that they chromed, which are pretty sick.
That's crazy. Why would they do that?
I don't know. That's another myth is, you hear, in the drum forum circles, you hear a lot about like when Ringo came over and played the Ed Sullivan Show, which I think was 1963 or 64. I think it's 64. And I mean, that just changed the whole industry because there was a lot of Slingerland, like was the big company before then. And then Ludwig. Right. And so they were pumping out like so many drums, especially in the 60s. And the quality control on those drums is not great. Which is another thing too, is like a lot of those shells are not in round. They'll have like a big hump, especially on the floor tom where the scarf joint goes in.
Those for sure.
Man, I got a snare drum one time. The joke is always it was a Friday in the factory. And the snare bed was on the batter edge.
For like 40 years, no one fixed it.
You know what they did? So the standard Ludwig standard shells are B-stock shells. They're like, oh, yes, we'll just make it a standard shell. Like you can't, So I think there's a lot of, some things are just not, there's not like a rule. There's not like these hard, fast rules for what left the factory and what didn't. I've heard stories, and granted there's stories of like the Ludwig talking about sometimes you would use like balsa wood. It was like kind of like what they had, like they ran out. You know what I mean? And another thing is, with the 60s Ludwigs, people will ask, what's the ply layup? And most of them are painted white on the inside. I don't know why they did that. It was stupid. So you kind of have to like look at the edge and like, well, I heard it was either mahogany, poplar, mahogany, or maple, mahogany, maple. A lot of them are maple, poplar, mahogany. And I don't know if that really matters that much, I
always heard it was if they were wrapped or painted, that would be a determining factor.
Might be. I don't know. There's a lot. I mean, and that's another thing is people be like, you know so much about drums. I know a little bit. I don't know a lot. Like Rob Cook knows a lot. That guy knows a lot.
I didn't know that the standard shells were B-stock. Have you had some like incredible standards?
Honestly, a lot of them sound better than the classic kits.
Really?
And they use different hardware. So they have, I have a standard kit here. I do, but it doesn't matter. They use different lugs and they're like lower profile and they're more lightweight. So I think that probably is a thing. So the shells resonate, but yeah, they sound awesome. And they're like way cooler wraps too. They do like all the strata wraps. They do like lemon strata, ruby strata, blue strata, avocado strata. So.
All right. I'm learning some stuff. All right. You might have already answered this, but has there been something that you expected to love, but you found it to be a bit of a letdown?
Oh yeah. Let's see here. Gretsch.
Sorry, Gretsch.
No, Gretsch. So we were talking about this off camera, but Mike's a Gretsch hater.
I'm not a hater. I just don't want to pay the money for them. Simple as that.
That's fair. Because I don't want to pay money.
And I played some round badges that sound like garbage. So,
hold on. I'm going to get something else because we're doing the get stuff thing. All right. So this is a good Gretsch. This is a 50s. This is one of our rental kits. It's a Progressive Jazz and White Marine Pearl.
That looks nice.
Yeah, so this is a good kit because this is a 3-ply tom. In the 3-ply ones, which they model the broadcasters off of, they're not as oversized as the round badge ones, which is why I don't really like round badge drums. And even some of the 70s stop sign badge drums because they make like classic fit heads, which do help. I sold a stop sign badge Progressive Jazz kit that was wrapped to a friend of mine. He's a collector. And sent the kit in. He's like, dude, I can't get heads on this kit. And they were in round. Like, well, did you try classic fit heads? Like, I got some on the way.
Yeah, those
you got him in. He's like, dude, I have to jam these classic.
I mean, I guess they were just calfskin only back then. I mean,
I don't know, man.
That's just weird.
It's just the ones that are natural finish, I think, are probably easier to get on. But a lot of, not a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, but it's not uncommon to get a round badge from this era and you take the head off and then the wrap is either cut or it's like all cracking. The kit that Mike Johnson had, that's the issue with that kit is I got it and the wrap had been cut back. But it sounded awesome because the wrap had been cut back and the head could fit on there. So it's not all Gretsch. I mean, Gretsch USA the square badge arrow gretsch is my favorite because I think they're still Jasper shells, but they're the right size. You can get a head on easily. They tune up great. They tune down great. Way better tuning range. Yeah. And also like you don't have to spend 10 grand to get a stop sign badge bop kit.
So what year did that was like 70s mostly?
Square badge was 80s.
80s?
Yeah. I think it was 80, 81. They did the stop sign badge with the drop G on them. And then they went to the square badge.
Okay. Sweet. All right. So you're a Gretsch hater as well. That's good to know.
I'm a Gretsch. I'm a Slingerland hater, Mike. Get it right.
What are some of the most underrated drum snares or cymbals, in your opinion?
Made in Japan drums.
Okay, you mentioned that earlier. So
Yeah.
what does that mean? Is that they're all Tama or Pearl? Who's making them?
There's two factories. There's Tama and Pearl. Oh, man, I should know the name of the factories. I don't. But basically at the time, like American drums are what everybody wanted.
Yeah.
And so the Japanese market was making their version of the drums and way cheaper, like almost like firewood. I'm going to go grab one more drum.
All right. That looks absolutely amazing.
All right, so this is a Japanese drum. It's a Norma. These are also called Stencil Drums because basically, like, they're all the same drums for the most part, and they just would make up like a brand name. Norma, U.S. Mercury. Oh, why am I forgetting all the?
I mean, couldn't you?
Whitehall. There's like so many of them. They're all the same. But they just would copy American hardware. So like, look at these lugs compared to this one.
Yeah, they're pretty much
Almost the same, right?
Yeah.
So they were, I don't know if you can see this on camera. They would like try to copy as much as they could. Look, stick saver style hoops, Slingerland.
Weird.
Is there a diamond plate on this one here?
So they're like combining Gretsch and Slingerland.
Diamond plate, yeah. Ludwig.
All into one.
But like the shell, man, is like literally, this actually is not terrible. But it looks like they just like grabbed it off like the Home Depot floor. And there's a thinner shell that's really good. It's called Luan, which is, I think, Japanese mahogany. I put rings in there. But
Yeah, that's what it looks like, right?
yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what some of the CNC stuff is made of Luan, right?
Yeah, so their player date was kind of like borrowed from that type of thing.
So that's like a weird, like full circle American company borrowing from the Japanese company that was borrowing from the American companies.
Yeah. It's definitely because there's a market. I mean, like this kit, I think we're selling for like $600 maybe, which like 5 or 6 years ago was like unheard of.
Like
Because
higher or lower?
higher. Well, like higher now because like people, and I've heard that the customers that we sell like the Japanese stuff to use it to record because that's, I think now, especially like in the country scene, a lot of like the quote unquote bad sounding drums are like kind of coming in.
You can thank Aaron Sterling, I think, for the trend. He's been ranting about him for a few years.
He's a boss. His thing is, from what I've heard, is he would like when he was touring, he'd like have all these awful backline kits, and he would just got like, he would just get like so mad and bored. He's like, I just want to make these sound cool, and that's what he did. But he gigged a Japanese kit with John Mayer.
Yeah, the U.S. Mercury. I think.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
Isn't that crazy?
This is a beautiful. I mean, that badge is just absolutely silly. I love that it's got a registered trademark symbol on it. Norma.
It's got the like even like fake Remo. I mean, I guess these are like Remo Soundmaster. You'd see these a lot like on the Japanese kits. So like the Remo, but I guess probably not Remo. Yeah.
All right, let's crank through a few more of these here.
Crank 'em.
What are the most important things to look for when buying a used or vintage drum?
So for me is like a bit, because this is it's a business. I love it. Like I'm a drummer first. The only reason I do this is because I play drums. What makes sense for us to invest in? Like I view each purchase as a small investment, and there's like a scale. Like I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who owns a shop, and like we'll pay more for something that's like rare. because we know we could sell it. And it's cool to have. But then like the middle of the road stuff is like, is it worth for us to pay the money to buy this kit? Does it need work? Do we got to clean it? Do I have to pay my employees for all that stuff? So it's like, what is the value? That's the number one thing. Like, I don't want to, and some people, customers, I always laugh. They're like, well, I know you need to make money on this. I know that the snare drum sells for $400. So if they want to make you a deal, I'll do $385. So
they don't quite understand how capitalism works.
The margins are, and honestly, like, it's a difficult conversation to have because we do buy a lot from folks who've had drums forever. Yeah. Like we bought the Avante kit we were looking at earlier from the original owner.
Yeah.
And there's definitely like a...
I think I'm going to take it home one day.
Mike, I would love for you to
staring at me.
It's the silliest idea of a drum kit. But I think it's tough because they've had these for years.
Yeah.
And having conversations about like selling to a dealer who's going to just turn around and sell it, it can be touchy sometimes because I don't want anybody to feel like they're getting ripped off. I don't want to lie to anybody. And that's kind of the nature of, like, frankly, a capitalist, not to go down that route, like capitalist business. Yeah. So what is the value? Does it make sense for us to invest in it?
Yeah. Otherwise, you just sell it privately. But didn't you get to deal with shipping it yourself? And
I had that conversation with a customer. They said, first, you're better off selling it on your own. Well, I don't want to do that. Okay. Here's what we can give you for it. Well, that's not what it's worth. I know. Do you want to sell it on your own? No, I don't want to do that.
We're not a laundering facility here.
Let me tell you. Yeah, exactly. Not a pawn shop. So I think other things to think about when buying is like, is it something cool? Is it something that fits in with our brand? We are trying to like expand into like newer stuff, CNC, Q, Karen Rogers, hopefully like some other brands eventually, accessories. Does it fit into your brand? Like some people will call in and like, we just don't do electric sets.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see like a lot of 80s like power toms or 90s.
Those are cool though, man.
But you don't have any.
Because people buy them.
Oh, there's one right there.
There's a couple. There's a couple. I do like power tom kits.
Okay.
Zach Glenn from Jimmy Eat World records with a Gretsch power tom, rack tom. It's dope.
I guess they'll come back eventually. You're still seeing 60s, 70s, some 80s, but not like late 80s yet, right?
It's coming, man.
It's coming, though.
I liked it. We saw a lot of Tama. Do you like Tama? And I would totally, if I was like a big gigging guy, power toms for sure.
Yeah?
I'm trying to get Giuseppe to like do like a crazy kit because he plays with the Devil Wears Prada. Like something stupid that like makes sense with, with like, I don't know.
Iron Maiden kit.
Well, sometimes we get these like concert tom kits in and like they're cool, but it's like 15 pieces.
Yeah. Then what do you do with that?
People buy them. I don't know what they do. I just like, and they're like not rigs of dad guys either.
All right. We have to talk a little bit about your background.
Sure.
How did you get into buying and selling old drums and why?
So I think I touched base on this. Been playing in bands since I was like a teenager. I was never a gear guy, ever. Like the guys I was in bands with, like, always taking pictures of their pedal board. Like, yeah, man, I moved my Boss pedal up the chain. Like, I don't care. Learn the song. You know what I mean?
Hey, can you play?
Right. And that's what it was like, dude, play your instrument. But I also sucked. So but I remember probably when I was like maybe 23, 24, I don't know. I was like watching a YouTube video of a Vista Lite kit. I'm like, this is sick, man. That's cool. And on a whim, I was in a Facebook group and I had my Tama Star Classic. It was the first real drum kit I bought with my own money. I walked into a store. I didn't know anything about, like, a gear. I'm like, that's a cool looking kit. He's like, all right. He's like, well, that one's sold. Let me order you one. And he's like, what size? I'm like, I don't know. 24 bass, whatever. I don't have a whole lot of money. Anyway, I put on a whim in the forum, does anybody want this? I'm looking for a Vista Lite. Guy responded, 26, 13, 16, black Vista Lite. Mega clean. We traded it. And that was it. I remember bringing it to the practice space and I'm sitting there and like, I'm not a tall guy. And the kick's like way up here and it's like real thin. Cause I was playing like an 18-inch kick at the time. And I just hit him like, this sounds terrible because it had terrible heads on it. But like, it was sick. And so from then I just was like, I traded that, I got this. I was always looking for the next the kit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ordered a CNC Kermit Grain kit. I'm like, this is the kit. And I played it for a while. I'm like, wasn't the kit. So I ended up with all this gear, and then, like, it was kind of like a side hustle. I'm like, well, it'd be cool to make some money here and there. And then my basement filled up, and my wife Emily is like, man, like we gotta get to the laundry. Like we gotta
get to the laundry.
She's like, get the stuff out of here. So I found a cheap warehouse space, moved into there, had a discussion with my landlord about how I in fact bought and sold drums, and I'd be playing drums, which he apparently did not listen to at all, because a week later I got an email saying, hey man, can you not play drums during business hours? I said, excuse me, this is literally an old hospital, and I understand that you somehow have a daycare on the first floor. So then I had to find a new spot, and then I moved down to the street here, and I moved into the dump station and was there for a year, and then the pandemic hit, and there was a drum shop here. They closed, and then I moved in here. So that's the very short version. No intentions of starting a business, no intentions of owning a drum shop. It just kind of happened.
So is there anything in here currently that has stayed with you through all of that transition, like the original era Hawthorne?
There is, but it's not cool.
It doesn't matter. What do you got? What is it? What stayed with you?
All right, hold on a minute.
A hi-hat stand?
A hi-hat stand. Oh, all right. Sorry about that. Can you guys see that on here? All right. It's a very rare Iron Cobra. I don't know if you know this about Tim and Mike, but they are the legend in innovation.
They sure are.
Yeah, this is, I don't know, this is just,
So
this
that
is my original, like, Iron Cobra stand. And I used to put tape on it just so you didn't get your hardware mixed up with other Iron Cobras. But yeah, this is, I got a GW 9000, but
is this currently for sale?
no.
Okay.
I literally will never sell this. Somebody could say $500 and I wouldn't sell it.
All right.
That's so dumb.
It's your hi-hat stand.
It's my
though.
hi-hat stand, man. It's great. It works great. It's got the little strap on here and everything.
So that's the only thing that's remained with you from all the different iterations?
My Keplinger, my 7x14 brass, which is the only drum I've ever modded that wasn't already modded, has been around for a while.
Interesting.
Do you want to see that?
Yeah, grab it.
All right.
Oh, no, that looks like a Keplinger.
Yes, sir. So this is it's not a special drum. I mean, you can buy these still. Oh. Check 1 2. Okay. I'm not good with mics, clearly. Yeah, I mean, it's not a special drum. You can still buy them. Greg makes them. It's a 7x14 brass Keplinger. I got it used, but it was like barely played. So it was like there's no patina on it. It had this, was it a trick throw off on there? Or was it a Dunette throw off?
It's got a Dunette butt end.
It was probably Dunette. Don't yell at me, Ron, please. If you're watching this. It's not a good throw off. I broke it, and then I bought another one, and I broke. But the spacing on them is like this, and no one makes a throw off that fits that spacing. So I put an indie one on, and you can see the original hole back there. So, but that drum is just, it's perfect.
What are these holes? That just his vent holes?
Yeah.
So he just drills some holes.
Very
in
advanced technology.
It's got to be heavy. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much like a belt brass.
It's 17 pounds.
Yeah, I don't know what more you could chase. It's a heavy-ass brass drum.
But this is one of our rentals too. I gig with it. I've sent it out on studio sessions and all that. So it's a special drum. I won't sell that one. I won't sell it.
Well, we literally covered everything.
Did we?
We did.
That's great. I'm
Make
glad we
sure.
did that.
So we didn't miss anything. No, we got it all. So I guess to wrap up, everyone can reach you at, what's the website?
www.hawthornedrumshop.com.
And then you're very active on Instagram.
Yeah.
So what is this?
Just at Hawthorne Drum Shop. We have retail hours. We're Friday and Saturday, noon to 5. Appointment throughout the week. So, yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was fun. Hopefully, I wasn't too much of an idiot like I usually am.
Let's see how the audio sounds since you talked in the side of the microphone for
the whole time. Oh my God!
All right,
You could have told me to not do that.
That's it for this week's episode. Hope you enjoyed this slightly different approach. I'm going to try to do some more in-person interviews as often as I can. If you enjoy the show, please head over to iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating, and I would love it. We would greatly appreciate it if you could write a review to help spread the word about the show, get this into the ears of more drummers around the world. So we'll do something slightly different again next week. So stay tuned, and we'll see you then.